Rain hammered the tin roof of a small house in Nairobi as Zuri packed her bag in a hurry. On the table sat a half-eaten birthday cake. Her boyfriend, Malik, had saved up all week to buy. She didn't even look at it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Kamau, the rich businessman who promised to change her life. His driver was already outside. Zuri glanced once at Malik's photo on the wall, then turned off the light. As she stepped out into the rain, a distant church bell rang, but she told herself she couldn't afford to look back. The rain turned the dusty road into mud. As Zuri climbed into the sleek, black car, the smell of leather and perfume filled the air, so different from Malik's old motorcycle. She stared out the window, her chest tight, watching their small neighborhood disappear behind her. She tried to convince herself that love couldn't pay rent or fix broken dreams. The driver didn't speak. Only the sound of rain and the faint bell from the distance followed her as the car rolled toward a part of Nairobi she had only seen in magazines. Mr. Kamau's mansion stood on a hill, shining with gold lights, even under the gray sky. The gate opened slowly, revealing a driveway lined with palm trees. Zuri stepped out, feeling small but excited. She told herself this was her new beginning. Mr. Kamau greeted her with a smile, holding an umbrella. His charm was easy, his confidence steady. "Welcome home," he said. And for a brief second, she believed it. She walked inside, leaving wet footprints on marble floors, unaware of how far she was stepping from the person she used to be. Inside, everything felt too perfect. Polished floors, quiet halls, and walls covered with paintings that seemed to watch her. Mr. Kamau showed her to a guest room, larger than her entire old house. He talked about the life they could build together, about travel, comfort, and security. Zuri nodded, smiling when expected. But something inside her felt heavy. She thought of Malik's small hands, covered in engine oil, the way he used to laugh at her dreams. That night, she slept in silk sheets for the first time, but it didn't feel like rest. The next morning, Zuri woke up to the sound of birds instead of traffic. Breakfast waited for her. Fruits, pastries, and imported tea. Mr. Kamau sat across the table, reading the newspaper. He smiled and told her she had a good heart, that she deserved more than struggle. Zuri smiled back, but avoided his eyes. She didn't know if she agreed. The housekeeper cleared Malik's birthday cake from her bag by mistake. When Zuri saw it thrown in the trash, she didn't say anything, she just turned away, pretending not to care. Outside, Malik walked through the muddy streets, his clothes soaked, and his face pale. He had come to the house, only to find her gone. The neighbors whispered, some shaking their heads, calling her ungrateful. He didn't answer anyone. He went back to the small garage where he worked, staring at the empty stool where she used to sit. Every sound reminded him of her. The rain, the bell from the church, even the smell of cheap candles he bought for her birthday. He stayed quiet, wondering if love meant nothing to her anymore. Days turned into weeks. Zuri learned to walk in heels and to smile for photos. She went to dinners where she didn't understand half the conversations, but people called her lucky. Every time Mr. Kamau introduced her as my future wife, she smiled. But deep down, a small part of her kept whispering, "This isn't you." At night, she looked through her purse and found the old bus ticket Malik had given her from their first trip together. She almost threw it away, but couldn't. Instead, she folded it neatly and kept it close. Mr. Kamau took Zuri to see his business projects across Nairobi. He was powerful. Every meeting room went silent when he entered. Zuri admired him, but also feared him. One evening, he mentioned his son who lived abroad. "Musa," he said proudly. "He doesn't visit often." Zuri nodded, not thinking much of it. But when she saw a framed photo of a boy on the desk, something about his eyes looked familiar. She brushed it off, convincing herself she was imagining things. After all, the past was behind her now. Meanwhile, Malik took whatever work he could find. One morning, he joined a construction crew, repairing a guest house on a hill. When he arrived, he froze. It was Mr. Kamal's mansion. He almost turned back, but the foreman yelled for help. Malik lowered his head and kept working, pretending not to see the woman he once loved, now walking on polished stone. Every hammer strike echoed his anger. Every laugh from her direction felt like a cut. But he told himself, he was done caring. Even lies sound easier when spoken to yourself. Zuri noticed him immediately. She saw Malik across the yard, covered in dust. His eyes hollow. Their eyes met for a second, before she looked away quickly. Her stomach turned, but she smiled at the guests nearby, as if nothing had happened. That night, she couldn't sleep. The air felt heavy. She heard the faint bell again from the church, in the valley. One slow, lonely ring. For the first time since she left, tears filled her eyes. She realized she had traded safety for silence, and silence was starting to hurt. The next morning, Mr. Kamal noticed her quiet mood. He handed her a small gift, a jar of imported honey, and told her it was a symbol of sweetness that never fades. Zuri smiled politely, but as soon as he left, her hands trembled. When she placed the jar on the counter, it slipped and shattered. Honey spread across the marble floor, thick and golden. As she bent to clean it, she noticed something under the cabinet, a dusty photograph, face down. She pulled it out, and her breath caught in her throat. The photo was old and faded. It showed a younger Mr. Kamal, standing beside a small boy who looked exactly like Malik. Zuri stared at it, her heart racing. The scar above the boy's eyebrow, the shape of his eyes. There was no mistake. She hid the photo quickly when she heard footsteps. All day she tried to smile, but her mind kept spinning. That night, she placed the picture under her pillow and lay awake, listening to the rain tapping on the window, each drop feeling heavier than the last. The next morning, Zuri told herself it had to be a coincidence. There could be many boys with that face. But when Mr. Kamal mentioned how he once had a family he lost along the way, she froze. He didn't notice her reaction, only sighed and talked about how ambition costs something. Zuri excused herself, walking to the balcony for air. Below, she saw Malik fixing the garden lights. The world tilted slightly. The man she left for wealth might be the son of the man she now planned to marry. She avoided both of them for days. But guilt grows quietly. Each time she saw Malik in the distance, her chest tightened. She wanted to talk to him, to explain, but fear kept her silent. Mr. Kamal's attention only grew stronger. He bought her new dresses, jewelry, and planned a grand engagement party. Zuri smiled for the cameras, but her heart felt numb. Later that night, she sat in her room and opened the drawer where she kept the photo. It stared back at her, demanding an answer she wasn't ready to give. Zuri couldn't take it anymore. The next morning, she went to the garden where Malik worked, pretending to be surprised to see him. She asked how he'd been, trying to sound casual, but Malik only nodded and walked away. His silence hurt more than words. The bell rang again from the church down the hill. Zuri watched him disappear behind the gate. Her chest felt hollow, and her eyes burned, but she didn't chase him. She went back inside, forcing herself to smile at the maids, as if everything was fine. That night, when Mr. Kamal went to bed, Zuri crept into his private study. She moved quietly, her bare feet soft against the rug. The air smelled like old books and cigar smoke. On the desk were stacks of papers, photos, and a few letters. She searched carefully, her hands shaking. When she opened the bottom drawer, she found an envelope labeled M. Inside were more pictures. Malik as a child, his mother beside him. The truth hit her hard. She sank to the floor, covering her mouth, trying not to cry. Quiet beat. Zuri sat on the cold floor of the study, holding the photos close to her chest. The rain outside had stopped, but thunder still rumbled far away. She could see her reflection in the glass cabinet, her new clothes, her jewelry. All of it felt wrong now. She thought of Malik's small room, his laughter, his quiet love. The silence around her felt like punishment. For the first time since she arrived, she wished she could go back. Not for love or comfort, but for peace. The next morning, Zuri skipped breakfast and went into town alone. She walked the busy market streets, hoping the noise would drown out her thoughts. She ended up at the small garage where Malik used to work. But it was empty. The smell of oil and metal brought memories rushing back. She sat on a bench nearby, holding the photo of him as a boy. A street preacher nearby spoke about truths that always come to light. The words followed her all the way back to the mansion, like an echo she couldn't shake. When she got home, Mr. Kamar was waiting in the living room. He asked where she'd been, and she lied about shopping. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He told her Musa was flying in soon, and wanted her to meet him properly. Zuri's stomach turned. She excused herself, pretending to feel tired. In her room, she locked the door and stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back seemed older, colder, and scared. She realized she wasn't running toward happiness anymore. She was running from truth. Later that night, Zuri opened her closet and packed a small bag, thinking of leaving before things got worse. But as she zipped it shut, she heard footsteps outside her door. Mr. Kamau knocked softly, asking if she was okay. She forced her voice to sound steady and said she was fine. After he left, she sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the old photo. She knew she had to tell him what she found. But how could she tell a man she planned to marry that she once loved his son? Quiet beat. The rain began again. Zuri opened the window and watched it fall on the garden below. She could see Malik's empty workstation, the tools left behind. She remembered the way he used to hum while fixing things. How calm he always was. She held the bus ticket he once gave her and whispered his name under her breath. The sound of the bell drifted through the rain again. It was steady, sad, and familiar. Zuri closed her eyes, knowing that no matter what she chose, someone would end up broken. The next morning, Zuri walked into the dining hall, determined to tell Mr. Kamau everything. But before she could speak, he handed her a box. Inside was a diamond ring. "It's time we make it official," he said, with pride. Zuri's throat went dry. She forced a smile, her heart pounding. She wanted to speak, to stop this, but her words wouldn't come out. When he slipped the ring on her finger, she felt the weight of it press, like a secret she couldn't hide anymore. After he left for work, Zuri searched the study again, desperate for answers. She found letters from Malik's mother, some opened, some torn. They spoke of betrayal, money, and a child left behind. She cried quietly, realizing Malik's pain went deeper than she ever imagined. The man she thought was her savior had destroyed someone else's family, and now, she was the link between them both. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger, one trapped in a life that wasn't hers. That evening, Malik came back to the mansion to collect his pay. Zuri saw him through the window and rushed outside before she could think. He stopped when he saw her, eyes filled with anger. She tried to speak, but he walked away. She called after him, her voice shaking. "Don't marry him," he finally said, not turning around. "You don't know who he really is." Before she could answer, he was gone. The sky darkened, and thunder rolled. Zuri's hands trembled, as she realized he knew too. She returned to the house, and found Mr. Kamau waiting for her in the study. His tone was sharp now. He asked if she'd spoken to the workers again. She lied, saying no. He studied her face for a long moment before saying, "You're not like the others. Don't disappoint me." Zuri smiled weakly, her heart racing. After he left, she sank to the floor, holding her chest. She could feel everything falling apart, but didn't know how to stop it. That night, Zuri stood on the balcony, watching lightning flash across the sky. The mansion below her gleamed like gold, but all she felt was emptiness. She knew she couldn't live in this lie any longer. The photo, the ring, the honey, they all felt like pieces of a story that wasn't hers to carry. The bell rang again, echoing through the hills. Zuri whispered to herself, but tomorrow she'd tell the truth, even if it destroyed everything. But deep down, she knew the storm had only begun. Malik's hands shook as he unfolded the newspaper at the bus stop. On the front page was a photo of Mr. Kamar and Zuri announcing their engagement. For a moment he couldn't breathe. The world blurred, and everything inside him went still. Then his eyes caught the caption, "Businessman Richard Kamar and his fiancée Zuri." His last name hit him like a punch. Malik remembered his mother's old documents, the same name on a faded birth certificate. He realized the truth at once. The man Zuri chose wasn't just rich, he was his father. Malik walked aimlessly through the crowded streets of Nairobi, the rain soaking through his clothes. His thoughts spun in circles: anger, heartbreak, disbelief. He stopped under a broken streetlight, staring at his reflection in a puddle. He remembered his mother's voice warning him that the past always finds a way back. He didn't know if he wanted revenge or closure, but one thing was clear. Zuri had no idea what she had stepped into. He turned around and began walking toward the mansion again, each step heavier than the last. At the mansion, Malik demanded to see Mr. Kamei. The guards tried to stop him, but his anger broke through their hesitation. He shouted his father's name until Mr. Kamei appeared on the balcony. Their eyes met for the first time in years. Mr. Kamei looked shocked, but said nothing. When Malik yelled, "You left us," the guards pulled him away. Zuri watched from the balcony, frozen in horror, realizing that the truth was finally out. She wanted to run to him, to explain, but she knew there was nothing she could say. Malik was thrown out through the gate. He stood there in the rain, his clothes clinging to his skin, watching the lights flicker inside the mansion. He felt small, humiliated, and betrayed all over again. Zuri stood behind the curtain, crying quietly. She had caused this. Every lie, every choice, led here. Inside, Mr. Kamau ordered everyone to stay silent about what happened. But silence never lasts long in a house built on secrets. That night, Zuri couldn't sleep. The sound of thunder blended with the faint bell she kept hearing, tolling like a warning. Quiet beat. The next morning, the storm had cleared. Zuri sat by her window, holding Malik's old bus ticket. The sunlight hit it gently. The ink faded but still visible. She traced the numbers with her thumb, remembering the day he gave it to her, smiling, hopeful, believing in forever. She realized that love, no matter how small, had once been pure. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She whispered his name softly, not knowing if he'd ever forgive her. Outside, the world went on, uncaring, but inside her, something finally cracked open. That afternoon, Zuri packed her things again. This time, There was no excitement, no rush, only quiet resolve. She folded her few belongings, leaving behind the jewelry and designer clothes. She slipped the photo of Malik as a boy into her bag. Her plan was simple. Leave before the wedding, disappear before the headlines hit. But as she dragged her suitcase down the hall, she heard Mr. Kamau's voice calling her name. He was standing at the end of the corridor, holding her engagement ring in his hand. He asked where she was going. His tone calm but sharp. Zuri froze, her throat dry. He noticed the missing ring and smiled faintly. "You're scared, aren't you?" he said. She didn't answer. Mr. Kamau stepped closer, his eyes cold. "People think they want the truth," he said softly, "until it costs them everything." Zuri took a step back, clutching her bag. She didn't care about money anymore. She only wanted to escape the guilt that was eating her alive. But he blocked the door, waiting for her to speak. Her heart pounded as she finally said it. "I know about Malik," she whispered. The words hung heavy between them. Mr. Kamau went still, his expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he sighed and sat down, almost tired. "So he told you," he said quietly. Zuri shook her head. "No," she replied. "I found out." He looked at her for a long time, eyes full of something between sadness and calculation. "That's unfortunate," he said. His voice was calm, but she could feel the anger beneath it. Mr. Kamau walked to the window, staring out at the city below. He spoke about how he had built everything from nothing, how mistakes were necessary to survive. Zuri stood silently, realizing he felt no guilt. When she mentioned Malik's name again, his tone changed. "He'll ruin you if you let him pull you down," he said. "You think he loves you, but he only wants what I have." Zuri wanted to scream that love wasn't a competition, but the words stayed stuck in her throat. She finally saw who he truly was. Zuri left the room, trembling. She ran to the balcony for air, her chest tight. Down below she saw Malik standing near the gate again, waiting. For a brief second, she felt a rush of courage. She realized she was the one holding the power now. The choice between comfort and conscience. The same bell she kept hearing rang again, louder. This time, she whispered, "I'm done," and turned toward the stairs. The storm inside her finally broke. If you've ever wondered what someone does when their whole world collapses in one night, Mr. Kamau called for Malik to come inside. The guards hesitated, but he insisted. Zuri stayed near the staircase, hidden, her hands gripping the railing. When Malik entered the living room, the tension filled the air like heat before lightning. Mr. Kamau poured 2 glasses of whiskey, pretending to act calm. "You wanted to see me, son," he said quietly. Malik didn't respond. His eyes were full of years of anger. Zuri watched, her heart aching, realizing the moment of truth was finally here. Malik stepped forward, his voice low but steady. He told his father that no amount of money could erase what he'd done. Mr. Kamau listened without interrupting, only swirling his drink slowly. When Malik finished, Mr. Kamau said, "You think I owe you something?" Malik didn't answer. Zuri could feel both their pain colliding. 2 men chained to the same wound. She wanted to stop them, but fear rooted her to the spot. The air in the room felt thick, almost unbreathable. Then Malik's eyes turned toward the staircase. He saw her. Zuri froze, caught between both men. Malik's face softened for a second, then hardened again. Mr. Kamau followed his gaze, and saw her too. The silence that followed felt endless. Mr. Kamau set down his glass, his jaw tightening. "So that's why you're here," he said to Malik. You still can't let go of what's mine. Zuri shook her head, whispering, no. But neither man seemed to hear her anymore. Mr. Kamar spoke with calm cruelty. He told Malik that people like him were born to serve, not to win. Malik clenched his fists, but didn't move. You took everything from us, Malik said. Mr. Kamar smiled faintly, as if amused. Zuri felt tears burning her eyes. The father saw his son as a threat, not blood. The son saw his father as a ghost that never died. And Zuri, she was the line between them, trembling, breaking, and unsure which side of history she belonged to. Malik turned away and walked out, refusing to give his father another word. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the mansion. Zuri ran after him but stopped halfway, her knees weak. Mr. Kamar stood still, staring into space. He'll be back, he muttered. But his voice sounded uncertain. Zuri realized both men were prisoners of pride. One couldn't forgive. The other couldn't confess. She backed away slowly, knowing she couldn't save either of them if she stayed here. That night, Zuri entered Mr. Kamar's office for the last time. The engagement ring lay on the desk beside a folder of business papers. She picked it up and held it in her palm. It no longer sparkled. It just felt heavy. She placed it on the folder and whispered, I can't be part of this lie. For once. Her voice didn't shake. She left the door open behind her and walked down the hall barefoot, the sound of her steps steady and sure. Mr. Kamar found the ring the next morning. He didn't call for her. He didn't send anyone to stop her. He just sat at his desk, staring out the window. The city lights reflected in his tired eyes. Power had built his world, but it couldn't keep anyone close. He realized too late that everything he tried to own eventually slipped away. For the first time in years, he felt something close to regret, but not enough to change. The silence of the house felt like punishment. Zuri walked through the city streets with a single bag in her hand. She had nowhere to go, but she didn't care. The noise of Nairobi wrapped around her like a blanket. Car horns, laughter, vendors calling. For the first time in months, she felt alive. She passed a jewelry store and saw her reflection in the glass. No diamonds, no makeup, just herself again. In her pocket, the folded bus ticket felt warm. She held it tightly, a reminder that not every loss is a failure. As the sun set, Zuri found herself standing near the small cafe where she and Malik once spent afternoons dreaming about the future. To her surprise, he was there, fixing a broken light outside. Their eyes met, and time seemed to pause. Neither smiled, neither cried. They just stood there, rain starting to fall again, like the day it all began. The church bell rang in the distance, slow and steady, without words. They both understood that love sometimes returns, not to restart, but to remind. Zuri stepped closer, the rain washing away the last traces of fear. Malik looked at her, and for the first time she saw no anger in his eyes, only exhaustion and something softer. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They both knew forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, but letting go. When she finally turned to leave, he didn't stop her. The bell rang again, fading into the night. Some endings are quiet, but they still mean freedom. Weeks passed. Mr. Kamar's mansion grew quiet. The parties stopped. The laughter disappeared. He sat on his balcony every evening, staring at the city lights that used to make him proud. The world still respected him, but he felt empty. Every sound echoed too loudly. Every corner of the house reminded him of the people he couldn't keep. Sometimes he thought he heard the faint sound of a bell in the distance, but it was just the wind. Loneliness had finally caught up with him. Zuri started working at a small cafe downtown. The pay was little, but the peace was priceless. She learned how to smile again, how to sleep through the night without guilt. She often served tea to strangers who reminded her of her old life, polished, busy, restless. But she no longer envied them. She knew what it cost to live without peace. The jar of honey she once broke was replaced by a small one she bought herself, kept behind the counter, a quiet symbol of lessons learned. Sometimes, Malik came by. He didn't say much. They'd exchange a few words, maybe a smile, but never talk about the past. Their silence wasn't cold anymore. It was understanding. They had been through the same storm, just in different ways. Once, he left a bus ticket on the table after paying for coffee. It wasn't hers, just a new one, but it made her smile, knowing that maybe, someday, they'd take another trip, not as lovers, but as survivors who finally forgave life. One rainy morning, Zuri walked to the post office and left a small package addressed to Mr. Kamau. Inside was a jar of honey and a note that read, "Sweetness only lasts when shared." She didn't expect a reply. She just wanted to end the story her silence helped build. As she walked back, the sky began to clear. The air smelled fresh, like after a storm. She felt lighter, freer than she had in years. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, the distant bell rang one last time. Zuri sat outside the cafe, watching people hurry home, laughter filling the streets. The sound didn't feel like a warning anymore. It felt like peace. She had lost love, wealth, and comfort, but gained something better herself. Somewhere far away, Mr. Kamau sat quietly with her note in his hand. For the first time in a long while, he smiled. The world had finally gone still.